Hey guys, and welcome. First of all, I want to do some updates. I've started a new school, university. I guess yes, in English you call this university. And I've got less time on my hands, so there's a lot of things I can't do anymore. I had a website, a blog. I can't update it anymore, and I can't really look into filming things for YouTube anymore. I kind of wanted to start filming stuff, but it's not going to take off at this rate. So, like, I don't have time to just sit down, discuss what I'm going to do, think about it, deliberate around it, and make a good product. So instead what I'm gonna do is just making rolls. So yeah, so this is one of those rolls you'll see. I'll just do it in one take and we'll see what comes of it. So on another note, I noticed that I get some views on my videos. Like, I've got 1 subscriber is all, but I'm really grateful to that subscriber if he or she is actually watching. But yeah, it's just 1. It's not that bad. I guess subscribers will come when I put out good content, unique content. So what I actually want to say about this is, if you watch this, even if you don't like my videos, and you don't watch the whole video, and you don't subscribe, I don't really care. What I really care about is that people leave comments saying how I did, what were my good points, what were my bad points. It's like for university also, I need to improve my skills on lots of things, especially if I'm gonna get the job that I want to afterwards. I really need to get my communicative skills and my presentation skills up a lot. So what I'm gonna do is read a story that I wrote. It's a short story, kind of short. It's around, it's say 3 A4 papers full of text. I wrote this a few months ago, so it's not really smooth in my mind anymore. And I uploaded it on Batoto. Let me just get you the link for this. This is the link to the site, and if you're looking for the story, you should look on the forums for this thing. The story is called Elemental Knowledge, and it's actually the story is written as from the idea of a hermit knowing everything that should not be, or everything that is not. And the story is a fantasy story, and I just wrote it because I felt the urge to actually write the idea I had in my head down. Now, before I'm actually going to read it, I'm thinking about putting out videos where I'm actually writing this kind of stuff. So anyone who's watching this, please leave a comment about that. Also, I'm trying to work on a long story, and I think with that story, as soon as I reach about, say, 10 or 20 chapters, I'll try to bring it to someone who knows more about writing, and if it's a good story, I'll actually bring it up as a Kickstarter, and I'll try to get hardcover prints and all that good stuff. Yeah. So I might maybe post-process this role after all a little bit. I just had the idea, maybe I put in some music or something, but I don't think it's a good idea really, because my Dutch accent, or actually my accent, it's not always Dutch what I speak, like, but you might not be able to understand me if I process this too much, so I'll only do some minor changes to the audio, I guess. So, yeah, let's get right into it, and yeah, we'll see how it progresses. As I said, I don't have any idea what I'm doing really. The hermit watched the young man closely. From afar he saw him coming. Short, steady pace, and a wondrous sword hung at his side. There was no doubt that the young man was trying to reach him. The desolate landscape left little doubt. The hermit's cozy home was the only civilization found within days of traveling. What would the young man seek from me, I wonder? The hermit mumbled to himself, followed by some incoherent whisperings. He looked at the young man again, his eyes shimmering with interest. Then he went inside his home. If I am to have a guest, I might as well make a good meal for him, the hermit decided. Time passed on. The sun rose higher, and then it began to set again. The young man came closer and closer, patiently pacing on. There was no enthusiastic running, no tired dragging, just a steady pace in the direction of the hermit's house. Just so, the hermit was moving too. Mushrooms, onions, rice, a stray leek and a cut-up steak were moved from cellar to cooking pot. A nice soup was to be made. It would be made at a steady pace, no rushing, no lazing. And that evening, just before the sun set, the young man arrived at his destination. There, the hermit sat, waiting, on a crude bench outside his home. "Welcome, young man. I do not know what you seek, but I offer you a bowl of soup all the same." The hermit said this with a soft smile, but the warning was there. Of all the people that had sought him out, few had done so with good intentions. The young man, however, did not back down. "I thank you, wise one. Would you allow me to sit here with you on this good evening?" The young man smiled back as he accepted the bowl of soup and sat himself down next to the hermit. And there they sat in silence, first eating, then thinking. Neither spoke. They both learned from each other. Then, when the last of the sun had set, there was a stir in the air. The hermit looked at the young man, and the young man looked back. The young man nodded as he spoke to the hermit. "Indeed, but that is not what I seek. Once I did. But it would be foolish. But I would be foolish to do so now." "You would," the hermit answered, "but I suspect you yourself are already on par with it." The young man touched his sword, that now emitted a blackish glow. It was not much of a movement, more like a stir, a comfort, but it was there. The world felt it, and it shivered around the young man and the hermit. The comfort was there only for the young man. The world felt only fear. The hermit simply shrugged off the invisible surge. He whispered some incoherent words again. He looked away from the young man and scooped up a handful of dirt. Earth is close to humans, the hermit said. Its magic is simple, yet powerful. The hermit watched the handful of dirt closely, and the first ring of the plant, perhaps a flower, began to form. It is not easy to learn for even the simplest of mages. It's easy to learn for even the simplest of mages. Making a living of it is not hard either. Yet, you choose to not follow this path. Why? The young man scooped up a handful of dirt too. In it was the smallest beginning of a sapling. However, when the young man looked at it intently, it withered, blackened, leaving nothing but a black wisp of smoke. Earth is what binds us to flesh. It is what makes us equal. It is the reason we are all the same animals. The young man shook his head. I could never learn about Earth, for Earth is the fall of mankind. The hermit nodded and reached for a flask, and let the water within wash away the dirt on his hand. After that, he looked at it intently as it became ice, then water again, and finally steam. Water is cleansing. Water is what we are born from, and water is what carries our blood. The hermit smiled. Water is harder to understand, but by far the most useful magic you have everywhere. Yet you didn't choose to learn. Why? The young man looked sad and took the flask from the hermit. He poured the last of its contents on his cupped hand, but the water fell straight through it. Water is life, but it carries death in many ways. Water is whimsical. Water is not to be trusted. The young man sighed. Water is not but false hope. It has no solidness. How could I ever trust it? The hermit nodded. The hermit nodded again, and then he inhaled slowly, tasting the air. Few have noticed the magic in the air, and even less people have mastered its magic. Yet, those who do will fly with the birds. None of the masters shall ever drown, nor be crushed by any pressure. The hermit beckoned a loose leaf with his finger, and it flew towards him. The magic of the air would grant you access to worlds unknown to man, yet you didn't seek it. Why? The air is what we all breathe. But it is not ours to keep. We have to exhale again. I'm not a thief that I would steal the air, but neither do I want to borrow it. For them, it is not mine own. The young man exhaled, the air in front of him now shimmering, as if it was passing a barrier. The hermit fell silent for a while, overthinking the curious tale of the young man. He stood up and went inside his house. Once he emerged again, he held a flame in his hand, a cozy orange flame, like we'd see in a hearth. Fire is warmth and light, but alas, I know your answer. The hermit enclosed the flame with his fist, extinguishing it. You would tell me that the flame is a devourer, and that the warmth is treacherous. The young man nodded, and now seemed to project a cold aura. The hermit looked at the young man, and then looked up. He whispered a word into the night. I hear you. Is it yours? The young man asked, looking surprised that the hermit had said it, just like that. It is, or at least, it's part of it. The answer hung between them, like a thick curtain. Now the young man had to mention his too. That is he whispered, and the world around him seemed to fade for a moment. "Then, what do you seek from me?" the hermit asked, knowing that the young man was less of a threat now, but more dangerous than he had thought. He would not try to take what was the hermit's, but only because he had his own. "I seek nothing that is," the young man simply said. "I know all of it," the hermit solemnly answered. And there they sat together, the knowledge of what is not, the denial of what is, Nairin and Faris, like brothers, like twins, but divided in many ways. "What will I find?" the young man asked. "You will find what you need," the hermit said, "but it might not be what you want." "Then I will find something," the young man concluded, "because I want nothing." Then a bird started to whistle in the far distance. A campfire was lighted. "It seems that I will have more guests," the hermit said. "Please stay in my home this night, young man. Something might come your way." "Then so I will, wise one," the young man answered. He stood up and followed the hermit inside. The night passed on quietly. It seemed to have forgotten the horrors of that evening and the spell that were woven and unmade again. Only solemn silence remained. The silence as you would find it anywhere. That morning came, unaware of anything that would happen. It let the sun rise, just like the day before. And this day also, there was someone approaching the hermit's home. Except this time, it was a young woman. Her pace was light, but not rushed. With her, she carried a simple wooden staff. A rope was wound around it for grip. The ground around the staff seemed to bloom and wither in quick succession every time it touched the ground. Time passed. The sun rose higher. Then it began to set again. The young woman came closer and closer, lightly pacing on, no rushing, no tired dragging, just a light pace in the direction of the hermit's house. Just so the hermit and the young man were moving too. At least, the hermit was. The young man sat still, peeling the potatoes in front of him with great precision. The hermit got chicken and the last onions. They would make stuffed potatoes. The dish would be made at a steady pace. No rushing, no lazing. And then, in the early noon, the young woman arrived at the hermit's home. There she was greeted by the hermit and the young man, who had just finished stuffing the potatoes. "It would do us great pleasure if you would join in for the meal, girl," the hermit said to her. "Then I will do just so," the young woman answered as she stepped inside the cozy home. Inside, the hearth fire was burning softly, lighting the room with just enough light to make movement safe. The hermit, the young man, and the young woman sat, first eating, then thinking. No one said a word, but they learned from each other more than any of them knew. After a while, the young man stood up and went outside, where he sat himself on the crude bench. Inside the house, the hermit looked at the young woman. He closed his hand and opened it again, revealing a ball of pure light. Light is all that fire lacks. It is pure. It will not grow out of control, and nothing will be hidden for you, the hermit spoke. Yet, you choose to not find it. Why? Light is the source of all illusion. It is not only what uncovers, but also what hides. Many entitle light is good, but even so many are deceived by its looks. The young woman shook her head. Light is just for show. Why would they even seek it? The hermit closed his hand. The light vanished. Then he opened his other hand, and there lay a darkness deeper than the night. Darkness keeps us safe. Its cloak hides us as we seek secrets in her depths. Yet, you do not dwell there. Why? The young woman smiled. You already know why. Darkness is the absence of light. But that does not make it less deceitful, only. Instead of enveloping, it just swallows. And I do not wish to disappear. The hermit nodded again, as he had done so many times before, and then he fell silent again. The young woman then stood up and went outside, where she sat herself next to the young man on the bench. The young man looked at her, and he held out something that looked like a piece of metal. Sparks seemed to trail over it. Electricity is what carries information. It is what makes life possible. He or she who masters it would never fall ill. They would bring down the biggest foe with a sleight of hand. Why did you not choose it? The woman shook her head. Electricity is what keeps us going. How would I master it without draining myself of all life? There is no honor in being undead, so I did not choose this. Fair enough, the young man said. Then what about this? He held out his other hand, showing her a bird, sitting there in full trust. The magic of understanding living things is the hardest of all, ever-changing and never the same. Those who master it, however, will never call for aid in vain. Why did you not call on this power? The young woman took the bird, and in her hand appeared a skeleton and an egg next to each other. Controlling other life forms is not one's own strength. Even though it is the hardest magic to master, it is actually nothing at all. You are still weak. The young woman looked at the young man and whispered a single word. Shem. The sound of the word echoed around, as if the world answered to its commander. The stars turned over their heads, and a new day broke. Just then the hermit came outside. The only truth I found was the flow of time. So time is what I will command, the young woman said. The young man nodded. I searched for trust and found nothing. Therefore, nothing is what I will command, the young man replied. The hermit smiled at the sight of them, and then he looked up. The knowledge of all the words seemed foolish to me. Thus, I learned to know what is not of this world. The hermit sealed their conversation. Magic's woven in this world, fire, water, earth and air. Current, darkness, light and life, but not for us, it is what we share. We were left, but didn't care. Knowledge knows that without doubt, unknown worlds unending wide, be denied by blackened soul, long forgotten other side, is remembered by time's tide. And thus, the story of the three ends, as were all things one day. So, especially after reaching halfway through the story, I missed a few pronunciations. How I said women instead of woman, and I think I slightly changed the accent I was talking into, but I can't be sure because that's mainly a subconscious process with me. And I tricked a few words like more to the end too, like it's 12:30 in the night. It's like Yeah, you can see the clock right here. 0:33. Yeah. So, yeah, that's like how it is. But yeah, that was the story, like how I wrote it. You notice me adding some things, circumventing some spelling mistakes. It's a bit embarrassing actually, because right now I see like 20 mistakes I didn't notice before. I even saw somewhere I used double V, but like VD women or something. But well, um, this was the story. If you enjoyed it, you can leave a like, especially leave a comment. Like, I know most YouTubers think likes are better than comments. I know likes are useful, but comments to me are more encouraging. And yeah, if you enjoyed it, you do that, and that's it. I bid you farewell.